Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay, the performance by the Eagles yesterday against the Steelers. What were your thoughts on the all-around performance that we saw Philadelphia put together yesterday?
Really good. Really good. Especially coming off the kind of week that it was, with a lot of unhappiness coming off the game against Carolina, where there was a lot of grumbling after it was over. They felt like they didn't play particularly well on offense, and so there was a lot of talk around the team during the week about possible unhappiness in the locker room, a rift between the quarterback and the receivers, blah blah blah, and so there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered on Sunday, with the Eagles facing a much better opponent, obviously, in the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I thought that the way they came out, right away, and threw the ball effectively, moved the ball effectively, came up with a couple big stops on defense after a couple of turnovers, and then, really kind of took charge of the game from that point on. I thought it was one of their best performances in a while, Steve. They've had some good ones. The Rams were a pretty good team, and they beat them. They beat the Ravens. But this was one coming off the week that it was, with a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty kind of surrounding the team, to come out and play the way they played against Pittsburgh. And really, if you talk about in terms of totally shutting down an opponent, they really shut down the Steelers and won that game. So I thought, top to bottom, it was really, given the circumstances and all the talk coming into the game, I thought it was a really solid performance.
Yeah, you referenced the two turnovers early in the game, the Hurts fumble, the fumble by Cooper DeJean, and the defense gives up nothing along the way.
Right.
To me, that was the point of the game where I looked at it and said, Pittsburgh can't win today. If they can't take point blank and score in these situations, the Eagles' defense is playing at too high a level.
Yeah, exactly. That was my feeling exactly the same. Hurts gets stripped on fumbles. Pittsburgh gets the ball, can't do anything. Then they punt, and then the Eagles fumble the punt, and then the Steelers recover on the 10-yard line. It's a walk into the end zone from there. And the defense pushed them back, and they wound up settling for a field goal. And at that point, you just felt like the Eagles had control of the game. If the Steelers had a chance to really kind of jump out front and put some more pressure on the Eagles, that was the opportunity. And the defense just wouldn't let it happen. And that's the way the defense has played, really pretty much, throughout this 10-game winning streak. They have played really, really good. Vic Fangio has come in and as the defensive coordinator, and really pulled this unit together. And the addition of some young players, you mentioned DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, who's come in, and a lot of people are talking about him as Defensive Rookie of the Year. I certainly wouldn't vote against that. Right. They've added so much. And, Nakobe Dean, who the last 2 years was unable to really play because he was injured a lot, has really stepped up this year and brought a lot to the linebacker position. And, Zach Baun, who's a guy that nobody knew anything about at the start of the season, has played like a Pro Bowl player really from week one. So defensively right now, they're right now over the stretch of this 10-game winning streak. They're playing better than any defense in the NFL.
Is part of that the maturity of the young players up front, or maybe a Dean? Where is this coming from? We're now a unit that a year ago had some ups and downs. Now is somebody that you really can't penetrate.
Well, I think if you watch the games, and then if you go back and you watch the tape, the thing that jumps out at you is, compared to the defense of last year, especially at the end of last year, when everybody was scoring on this team. This defense is younger, it's faster, much faster. You can really see that on tape. It's more physical. They were a poor tackling team down the stretch last year. Now they're one of the best tackling teams in the league. And they are clearly better coached. This is a defense last year that fired its defensive coordinator. They were 10-1 and fired their defensive coordinator midseason. They brought in Matt Patricia, and it only got worse. So they just totally cleaned house there on the defensive side of the ball, coaching wise. And they brought in Vic Fangio, who's been around forever and has always had top 10 defenses. And he came in and took this group of guys, and a lot of young guys, as you alluded to, a lot of young guys, and he's got them playing at a really high level right now. And you look at it, I mean, they're the number one defense in the league right now. They're playing like it, and they're also the youngest defense in the league. I mean, you look at the 11 starters, the average age of them is 25. So you figure these guys are only going to get better.
Right. When I look at Quinyon Mitchell, look, he's out of Toledo, and I do realize that Nick Saban said, hey, in the transfer portal, we'd have gone after him in a heartbeat, which I understand. But when you see a young player like this, I don't know if you can call him a shutdown corner yet, but playing at that level, what has that meant to the rest of the secondary that he holds his spot on the field all day?
It's huge. It's huge, and I don't like to throw the term around unnecessarily, but Steve, he is a shutdown corner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you look at him; he's got no interceptions. People say he's got no interceptions. Yeah, that's because nobody's throwing his way.
Right.
I mean, he has already established that level of respect here, and yeah, I mean, if you were evaluating going into the draft, yes, the Toledo thing was a factor because it was hard to judge him with the level of competition he was playing against. The receivers, yeah, he was blanketing the receivers that they were playing at Toledo. Right. But how does that translate to the guys he's going to be facing in the NFL? It's much easier to draft cornerbacks out of the SEC. But when you watched him, I mean, he has the perfect size. He's got great technique. And he's really physical he's not just a cover corner. I mean, he comes up and plays the run. I mean, he can pretty much do everything. That was what the tape told you. And the big test with him really was when he went to Mobile, when he went for the Senior Bowl. Because everybody was kind of waiting to see, okay, how's he going to do at a Senior Bowl when he's going to have to cover the best receivers in the draft. I mean, guys that are going to be sort of like the guys he's going to be covering on Sundays in the NFL. And he went to Mobile, and he was the best defensive back in camp by a long shot. I mean, it wasn't even close. And that answered the questions about, okay, is he just a product of playing at a lesser caliber competition in college? No, he's the real thing. And so the Eagles, hey, listen, I mean, they got a little lucky. I mean, this guy never should have been the 22nd pick in the draft.
Right.
I mean, he should have probably been a top 10 pick. But the fact is, everybody was drafting quarterbacks and receivers, and so the defensive players fell down the draft pretty far. And lo and behold, Quinyon Mitchell falls into the Eagles' lap at 22. And then in the second round, Howie Roseman, the general manager, did some pretty slick maneuvering to trade up to get Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
And so the Eagles come out of the draft with the two guys that I had ranked 1-2 at the cornerback position. They got both of them.
Yeah.
So it has made a huge difference in this defense. And the fact that Nakobe Dean is finally healthy and they're getting him on the field, you see how good he is. And Jalen Carter, who was their first pick a year ago, who was very promising last year but kind of tailed off at the end of the season, has played at a very high level right from week one. And right now he's playing as good as any interior defensive lineman in the league.
Yeah, no, I've got to give credit where credit's due there. Jalen Hurts during this 10-game winning streak has incredible stats. But what are your eyes, Ray, telling you about the level of play with which he is going about his business when he decides to throw the football?
I mean, there's been a lot of. Well, I guess this comes with playing quarterback in Philadelphia. You're under a microscope.
Sure.
I mean, every pass you throw is talked about on the streets of Philadelphia the next day. It's not easy to play quarterback in this town. I mean, ask Ron Jaworski, ask Randall Cunningham, ask Donovan McNabb for sure. But I think that. I think that Hurts has played well this year. I really do. It's been an adjustment because the offense is so different. I mean, right now they're running the ball more than any team in the league, and so Hurts' role in this is, I mean, nobody likes the term, but he's been kind of a game manager really for most of the season. But when he's had to make throws, he's made throws. And early in the season, through the first 4 games when they were 2-2. I mean, one of the reasons they were struggling early was because he was making mistakes and he was turning the ball over, and they were losing games as a result. And they just made a conscious decision during the bye week that we're going to come out of this bye, and we're going to come out and we're just going to build around the things we do best, which is block people at the line of scrimmage and hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. Mm-hmm. And that's what turned the whole season around. But when he's had to make throws, Hurts has made key throws. Now, last week's game against Carolina, it was a poor game for him. I mean, he held the ball too long. He didn't throw the ball particularly well. Didn't turn it over, but he didn't make many big plays. Yesterday, when everybody was looking at him to see, after some of the things that were said, and A.J. Brown talking about we need to improve our passing game, there was a lot of pressure on him coming into this game, and he came right out of the chute throwing strikes. And 8 for 8 in the first quarter, 11 for 12 in the first half, and you saw he finished up pretty much almost 300 yards, and you saw him playing with the kind of assurance that people are used to seeing him play with. So, I mean, there was a lot of talk about him. There was a lot of criticism about his play this year, which I thought a lot of it was unwarranted. But I think he put a lot of that to rest. Steve, my feeling has always been. I mean, Terry Bradshaw said in an interview I did with him years ago, I thought he said something that was really spot on when he said, you look at my stats, you look at me ranked among the all-time passers. I mean, you rank the all-time passers on passer efficiency rating or whatever they call that thing. Yeah. I mean, Bradshaw's like 93rd,
right?
And he said, I don't care about that. I don't care about completion percentage. I don't care about average yards per attempt. For a quarterback in the NFL, there are two things that matter: scoring points and winning games.
Yep.
That's what a quarterback's job is. If you score points and you win games, that's what you're out there to do. It's not to put up stats. And I think that you look at what Hurts has done in terms of scoring points and winning games. I mean, he's right there with anybody.
There are 8 billion people in the world. Why can't they find more than 15 people that can actually play the position?
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. It's a tough position. I've always contended it's the toughest position in sports. I really do think to play the mental and the physical, to say nothing of the emotional demands of playing that position. What's asked of you, and in terms of your leadership, in terms of being clutch, in terms of just this, being able to make those split-second decisions and take the big hits and get up and do it over again. Yeah. I think it's the toughest position in sports. It's not easy anywhere. I think it's tougher in some cities than others, and Philadelphia might be the toughest of all. You definitely have to be built and wired a certain way. Mm-hmm. And Jalen Hurts is a pretty even-keeled, doesn't show much emotion sort of guy. Yeah. But if you look at his record now, it's 49-18 as a starter or something. So that's if you're judging it just on who's winning games, he's winning games with the best of them.
Exactly. Ray, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for your valuable time today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Steve. Anytime.
Thanks.
Talk to you next month when the playoffs roll around.
You got that right. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yep, sure will. Take care, Steve. Bye-bye.
The Hall of Famer, the great Ray Didinger.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So, I know you and I exchanged some lineups earlier in the week. So, let's get into your team. When the move was made from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings, what did it do to the SMU offense as to what they could do that maybe they couldn't do before?
One thing it really did, and it was really evident in the game where the change kind of happened. I mean, both guys played each of the first 3 games, but in Game 3 against BYU, the pass rush was just relentless when Preston Stone was in. And because of the mobility and the speed of Kevin Jennings, they backed off with that pass rush. And we've seen more of that since then. And then, frankly, Kevin's just grown into the offense so much. He's a little over a year removed from his first start. He had to take over in the American Athletic Conference Championship game last year when Preston got hurt. And from that time to now, his trust in his offense, his trust in his teammates, and his trust in himself has grown immensely. He doesn't just look to take off and run anytime the pocket breaks down. He'll move around. He can throw on the run. He can set and throw. His arm talent is just, to me, off the charts for a guy who's only 6 foot tall. I'm really impressed with how well he can throw the football.
Right, and you're talking also 66%. There's been some accuracy to go with that, right?
Yeah, definitely so. And again, it comes from, his arm talent. I mean, the angles that he can throw from, that helps make up a little bit, I think, sometimes for his lack of height. There's times where, he'll have a big pass rusher coming right in his face, and he'll drop down the sidearm and throws a bullet. And it's really impressive with how strong his arm is, and that leads a lot, I think, to the accuracy that he has, too.
Brashard Smith was a wide receiver at Miami. What did Rhett Lashley see in him that said, you know what, he could be a, quote, running back for us?
Well, he knew he wanted him here because, of course, Rhett was his offensive coordinator for, I believe, 1 year while he was at Miami, one of the 2 years that Rhett was there. And he knew he wanted him here, but he didn't have a place for him at wide receiver. He knew he would be a dangerous kickoff returner, and he felt he could be a running back here just because of his speed. He only had 18 carries in his 3 years that he played at Miami. And, he became, as an all-purpose player, an All-American this year here at SMU. He has really grabbed the bull by the horns himself, Brashard has, because he's not just a guy that needs to bounce it outside and use his speed. He's not afraid to run up the middle between the tackles. He's really improved from game one to now with his blitz pickup and his protection to the quarterback, too. And frankly, I think he may have turned himself into an NFL player with this one dynamic season he's had here.
He's been outstanding, over 1,100 yards rushing. And how valuable is he to Kevin Jennings? Just swinging out of the backfield and just being there.
Very much so. And they'll even run him downfield, too, because that is the other side of it is when they send him downfield, he makes moves and catches balls like a wide receiver does. He's not just a back out of the backfield. He knows what to do when he gets downfield. And as a running back, he often ends up in mismatches, too, with linebackers trying to defend him downfield. So, he's been a real dangerous weapon all the way around.
Daniels, he made a phenomenal catch in the ACC championship game to set up a touchdown. When you look at him in the running game, wide receiver, and as a returner, what does he mean to this team?
A little bit of everything, and it's a shame that we're just about done with him here. He's played all 4 years here. He didn't get a COVID year, doesn't get a redshirt year, and we keep looking for another year because he is absolutely playing his best in the last month and a half. And you mentioned in the running game early in the season, because of injuries, he ended up, as a matter of fact, in the Florida State game, he was the number 2 running back for that game. Mm-hmm. And at one point, the number 1, because Brashard Smith went to the locker room with a minor injury at one point. He's gone back to wide receiver now pretty much full-time, partly because of numbers there with some injuries. But he is a playmaker. He's got big playability. As a punt returner, he's nerve-wracking. Let's put it that way. And he had a touchdown earlier this year. He had a touchdown last year, too. But he'll muff one on you here or there. So he can be a little bit nerve-wracking back there. But obviously a huge weapon for them all the way around.
How about the word adventurous? You like that?
Yes, there you go.
Adventurous would be good. I like that. Everybody gets hit with injuries. I can give you the list. In fact, I gave you the list of guys that were not on the depth chart for Penn State that have the long-term injury deal. SMU's been hit with it as well, a tight end and wide receiver. What kind of impact has that had down the stretch?
Well, not as much as would have in years past before this was a Power 4 program because they have the depth. I mean, at the start of the season, running back has been hit with injuries too. At the start of the season, we were wondering how 4 guys were going to get carries. Well, one was injured on the second day of fall camp, and one was injured in week 2 of the season of those 4 guys. And so now you're down to Brashard Smith and his primary backup, L.J. Johnson. Wide receiver, they've been down to 4 for the most part for a month. Now they've added one in since, Romello Brinson, a guy who was hurt early in the season, and they opted to hold him out so that he actually's got a red shirt and come back next year, but he can play here in the postseason, and he had a great game last week against Clemson. R.J. Maryland, huge loss at tight end. He's not quite as good as your guy, but he's pretty good. The thing that's been great is that Matt Hibner, who you guys may have seen when he was in Michigan the last several years, he caught 2 balls in all of his time at Michigan, and he's turned into a really reliable receiver here. And has a chance to come back next year, too, with a COVID year at his disposal. So they've been able to make up for those losses because of the depth that they have recruited here, which is something that, for this program, is an all-new thing to do.
Well, in fact, he played here last year for Michigan. And see, that's when I look at the transfer portal, it's guys like him that I look at, and it makes sense because he's behind Cortland Loveland. right? With all due respect to him, because they've kind of established what the pecking order is, he's not going to pass him out. Now he goes to SMU, he's got a great opportunity. To me, that's what the portal's about.
Yeah, and at the start of this year, he was behind R.J. Maryland, and they weren't throwing him the ball much. And as soon as R.J. blew his knee out in the Stanford game, he became the number one guy, and he even showed a speed we didn't know he had. He had an 80-yard touchdown catch against Pitt last month. So he's made the most of his opportunity here in the last half of the season.
Defensively, those Booker I've seen before because he played at Maryland against Penn State. The two defensive ends to me are very impressive. What have they done to really disrupt offenses to this point?
So Elijah Roberts was a guy who had 10 sacks last season, has not put up the same numbers sack-wise this year, but he has such a great effect on the game. He's played way differently this year than he was last year, and it's limited his sack numbers, but Pro Football Focus has had him among the top 3, top 5 in quarterback pressures all season long. So he's very disruptive that way. And then Jafari Harvey off the other edge, a Miami transfer. By the way, Elijah was a Miami transfer last year, and Harvey a Miami transfer this year. And you've probably seen we got a lot of those on this SMU roster. Yeah. Jafari, though, has tremendous speed coming off the edge. He's got an interesting trick, too, if you saw the way the Duke game ended. SMU had to block a field goal at the end of regulation to have any chance, and he did a one-step hop over the line and then another hop to block the field goal that would have won the game for Duke. Gave SMU the chance to win it in overtime, but really athletic and really fast off the edge is what Harvey brings with it.
I also noticed in watching, some video, there'll be times where Roberts and Harvey, in pass situations, occasionally line up on the same side together. How effective is that package been?
Very much so, because Elijah will move in and play defensive tackle because he's got enough size to play inside, and it allows them to get either Cameron Robertson or Isaiah Smith as the other edge rusher opposite of Jafari Harvey. And Smith is a guy who's been a career backup here, and he has 14 sacks in his 3 seasons here, and he may be the fastest guy on the defensive line. So that's really one of the advantages. It gives you another pass rush threat on the inside, but bringing another one of their really good edge rushers on top of it.
Kobe Wilson, side to side, I'm impressed watching him play at that linebacking spot. What has he meant to that defense?
Oh, he's meant so much. This is his second year after transferring in from Temple, and he's a guy who came in with a chip on his shoulder because he was pretty lightly recruited coming out of high school, coming out of Georgia, and felt he should have been considered by power conference schools, and he wasn't. And he's played like it for 2 years, and he is absolutely the vocal leader and the emotional leader of that defense. It's funny because Ahmad Walker, who plays alongside him at linebacker, they're roommates, they're best friends, and they're complete polar opposites personality. Ahmad never says anything, and Kobe doesn't stop talking, and we enjoy it. He's fun, but he is a real dynamic guy, and he had a pick 6 this year against Florida State that was the most determined 82-yard run the team has had this season as he ran through and literally over guys. He's been a huge part of this defense here.
Plays a lot of zone in the secondary. Your thoughts on how the secondary's played to this point?
Definitely they're better than we thought they were going to be. Cornerback was the biggest question coming into this season for SMU. Brandon Crossley, a guy that moved from safety out to corner this year, has really, really grown into that role. They kind of rotated the other side between 2 guys with Deuce Harmon and Jalen Davis-Robinson. Now, the safety spot, they got 3 of them. They'll play 3 spots they play. They've got 4 guys they'll rotate amongst those spots, and that's really the strength of this defense right behind those linebackers. Isaiah Wakobe, at number 23, really the leader of that group. He was all-conference in the ACC this year and has been kind of the physical force of the defense on the back end.
And Colin Rogers, I mean, look, I've done this a long time. I don't think I've ever seen a kicker 15 of 21 beyond 40 yards. What has his scoring range meant to SMU's ability to score?
One of the biggest things is end of half. If they get the ball back at late first half with a minute to go, you always just all right, get to the 40, maybe the 38, and you're in field goal range. And that's kind of the goal at that point, because it's a luxury that Rhett Lashley admits that he has and he likes to take advantage of. He's 7 of 11, I believe, this year from 50-plus.
Yes.
That's one off the NCAA record for 50-yard field goals in a season. It's been tremendous to have a kicker who's that reliable. He's the all-time leading scorer in SMU history. 3 guys were tied for that record. One of them you may have heard of, Eric Dickerson, who was tied for that record previously. And he broke that 1st of October this season, and he's going to be here for another year, too.
So, Rich, I have to ask you about the transition to the ACC. I know that the SMU is not taking television money because in part they can afford to do it. I also understand within 48 hours of the ACC announcement, the amount of money raised was phenomenal. What did it mean to go from a group of 5, an American champion, which they were a year ago, to being in a Power 4 like this? What did it mean to the SMU community?
Well, you hit on it, though it was not quite 2 days. We took a week after the announcement was made last year to raise $100 million.
Okay.
$100 million in 1 week. That's all.
Yeah.
Because while not taking the TV money, they are still getting the other revenue sources from the conference, which already puts them ahead of where they were in the American. But they want to compete on the same financial level, so they had to get the donor support, and they saw it immediately. We have a small stadium here at SMU, certainly compared to Beaver Stadium, but the crowds weren't anywhere near filling the place up for many, many years. And they sold out 3 games, and every game had the best attendance. They had the highest percentage increase in the country in attendance this year among all the power schools. It has meant so much to a fan base that's been starved for this kind of thing ever since the death penalty hit the program in 1987.
Yeah, I know. I remember going back to that, and I talked about it the other day. The one common denominator player-wise is Matt McCartan, who played at SMU. Death penalty happened. He ended up starting as a tackle here at Penn State. He was out at Dallas Highlands, I think, high school. And he's the one common denominator. But when they gave SMU the death penalty, they really gave them a long-term sentence. It took forever for them to get out of it. It must have been just a tough road to get there. And Rhett's done an obviously phenomenal job with this.
Yeah, and some of it started before him, too. But, yeah, it was a tough road after the death penalty, and some of it was self-inflicted because the school wanted to make sure things like that didn't happen again. And they locked down so many things with academic requirements and things like that that made it tough to compete on the right level football-wise. I think they started to turn the corner a little bit as far back as 2009 when June Jones was here in his second year, got him to a bowl game for the first time in 25 years. Sonny Dykes came in 18, and he's the one who brought Rhett Lashley here as his offensive coordinator in 2018. And in 2019, got the school back into the top 25 for the first time since the mid-'80s. And they've kind of got it going there. I mean, they've had double-digit wins now in 3 of the last 6 seasons, 2 in a row here with Rhett Lashley leading them. But it's been a long slog to get here, I know that.
What's the excitement level around this game in the Dallas area?
Oh, huge. Our professional football team's not doing so well around here. So the college team has stepped in at the right time, and frankly, the other side of the Metroplex, TCU, hasn't been at the same level the last 2 years after they went to the national championship game with a bit of surprise, kind of like SMU's here in the CFP this year. But, it's as big as I have seen for this program since the Pony Express days, for sure.
It's going to be a great game coming up on Saturday. Rich, I'm really looking forward to seeing you. Thanks so much for all the time you gave me before and all the time today. I really appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely. Now, you're going to hold the snow off for us, right?
I don't think it's going to snow on Saturday. I don't think so. I think that
just 26, huh?
Well, I didn't say life was perfect. So
we can deal with 26, just no snow.
Yeah,
we'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much in the precipitation part. 26, yeah, probably. So, just warm.
It was 38 last week at the ACC championship, so I think they can deal with that.
There you go. Rich, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.